been reminded about it. Let's kind of do an example and go through the steps with an example. If you had noticed in the previous notes page, there was a scientist who had noticed some things about growing carrots and the needs that the soil had to have in order to grow those carrots. So that was his observation that brought him to a question: how can we grow the best carrots possible? And so then let's just go through the rest of the steps here. Here was step 2. He did some research. Don't know why he's a he. Probably should change that. Anyway, so the scientist did some research and determined that 5 parts per million of nitrate in the soil grows better than no nitrate in the soil. And when no nitrate is in the soil, there's no growth. Okay, so that was the research that they did to come up with this previous knowledge to lead them on to design an experiment. Step 3 then of the scientific method is to come up with that scientific question. Remember, a question that can be tested is that scientific question. And their question is, what is the optimal soil nitrate concentration for carrot growth? Is 5 the best? Maybe more, right? So, in fact, that was their hypothesis here, which was step 4. And their hypothesis is that the more nitrate you add, the more the carrots will grow. If 5 is good, maybe more is better, right? So that's their hypothesis. Then they went on to set up an experiment. And you can see here they have a couple of different containers for growing carrots. The first one has no nitrate in it. And this is actually called the negative control. So there should be no growth, right? Negative control, no growth. Right? Then they did a container to grow some carrots that had the 5 parts per million of nitrate. This is the positive control. Positive because there should be some growth. If there isn't, they can look at other things like water. Maybe the seeds are too old or the soil is bad in other ways. But we have a negative control and a positive control. No growth, there should be growth. Then set up the experiment. So this scientist chose 3 different soils to do their experiment with. This one has 10 parts per million of nitrate. This one has 100, and this one has 50. Okay. So we're going to see if 5 is good. Is 10 better? Is twice as much better? Is 50 times as much better? 10 times as much better? Like, what is best for growing these carrots? So these are the experimental groups that are used to test the hypothesis. Okay. So the hypothesis is more you add, the better it is. So let's see if you add more, if that helps the carrots to grow. Right. The next thing the scientists did is set up their experiment. Right. They have some things. These over here are the constants. Just like the word said, they're constants. They do not change. You got to add the same amount of water to all 5 containers. The type, the age, the size of the carrot seeds has to be the same for all 5 containers. And the soil has to be the same except for that nitrate concentration. All of these things have to be constant so you know that what's really making the difference is the concentration of the nitrate. All this other stuff has to remain constant, or you won't know. Was it the water? Was it the nitrate? Right? So those are the constants. Over here, we have the variables. Just like the word says, these are the things that change. They're variable. Right? There are 2 types of variables. There's an independent, D-E-N-T, and there's a dependent, D-E-N-T. So the independent variable is what is different between the experimental groups and the control groups. In this case, that happens to be the amount of nitrate. That's the difference, right? The dependent variable is the one that depends on this one. Okay? It's what you're measuring. What were we trying to figure out? They are trying to figure out how the carrots are growing. So the dependent variable is how the carrots are growing. And you can see here that they're determining that by mass. They're weighing the carrots. So bigger carrots will be better carrots. right? So independent variables, dependent variables. Then the scientists will go through, test their experiment, and see what happens. But there's just kind of an example process of how that scientific method works, and some definitions of some terms that you'll need to know throughout the semester as we set up our experiment.